You are listening to Packers Talk Radio Network.
Packers Talk.
You're listening to No Huddle Radio on the Packers Talk Radio Network, your home for in-depth and thoughtful Packers analysis. I'm joined by my good friend Gil Martin. He's a writer for thesportsdaily.com and Cheesehead TV, and I'm your host, JJ Leahy. We're here to talk Packers because you're all here for one thing, and that's a love for Green Bay football. The Packers beat the Lions 35-17 on Monday Night Football. Pretty good. Gil, you said 38-21 Packers. I said 31-17 on the podcast, and then on Twitter I couldn't remember what I had podcasted, so I said 34-17, which got me even closer. But now the Pack goes on the road to hell. I mean, Levi's Stadium. I don't like the 49ers. I don't like playing the 49ers. I don't like road games at Levi's Stadium. But we're going to break this down for you. We're going to talk about the quite banged up 49ers. This has been kind of a thing for most of Kyle Shanahan's tenure. Is, you know, you just got whole position groups that are just decimated by injury. Some years it is quarterback. Some years it is running back. That's what we have this year. Last year it was, you know, basically the entire team. And so we got the running backs. We also got some stuff going on with their cornerbacks that's going to be interesting to talk about. But we're going to start this off. I call to the stand Mr. Gil Martin to make his case for why the Green Bay Packers will beat the 49ers.
Wow. This is not an easy road. I think the case has to be made that the Packers have a big edge at quarterback in this game, that Rodgers is clearly a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's one thing. I think the Packers have another edge at running back, that the two-headed monster of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon is a better group than the banged-up 49ers running game. And I think that Jair Alexander may be able to slow down Deebo Samuel enough to give the Packers, to slow down the San Francisco offense just enough for Green Bay to outscore them. So that, to me, is your path to victory.
And to the stand, Mr. JJ Leahy, to argue why the San Francisco 49ers will trounce the Green Bay Packers. It all starts in the trenches. The 49ers have a very good offensive line. Trent Williams, their left tackle, is the number one tackle in football, according to PFF. And that is not even the worst of the news. The worst of the news is actually on defense. You got Nick Bosa. You got DJ Jones. You have Javon Kinlaw, who's doing okay. And those three guys, none of those are their best pass rusher right now. It's actually Eric Armstead. Eric Armstead is just killing it. He and Bosa and DJ Jones together are terrorizing opposing offenses, getting a lot of pressure both off the edge and on the inside. And that is bad news for a Packers unit that is missing David Bakhtiari, doesn't have Corey Linsley from the last few years, although Josh Myers is playing quite well. And this week might be missing Elton Jenkins. We'll have to find out. You're looking at guys like John Runyon starting at left guard. Possibly you're looking at tackles of Billy Turner and Dennis Kelly on the outside if Elton Jenkins can't go. We have seen over the last couple of years what happens when the line can't keep Aaron Rodgers clean. And not saying that that is what's going to happen, but the stars are certainly aligning that way. And it just, if the Packers offense can't get going early, they have a hard time getting going ever. So, stars are definitely aligning for the 49ers to make short work of the Green Bay Packers. And now we're going to transition over into our actual analysis of position groups, matchups, and things that the Packers can be taking advantage of. Let's go ahead and just have the Elgton Jenkins discussion. He's been held out of practice. Is that a precautionary thing? I think you would have to, with as important as he is to the offensive line right now, you have to hold him out if there's any questions at all. He's got an ankle injury, didn't participate in practice on Wednesday or Thursday. By the time you guys are listening to this, it's going to be Friday, so keep your ears peeled to see if he practices on Friday. That might give us an indication. But I don't think that they're, with as potentially serious as this ankle injury could be, I don't think there was ever a world in which he was going to be practicing early on in the week.
No, I don't think so either. And I think the overall philosophy of the Packers organization, the trainers, the coaching staff, etc., has been, let's hold these guys out early in the season if we have to, because we're going to need them in the last half of the season, the playoff stretch drive, and then hopefully the playoffs. So they'd rather sit a guy in September than not have him in November and December and January.
The rest of this offensive line is still concerning to me against this 49ers D-line, even if Elgton is good to go. Because Jon Runyan played decently well last week. So Jenkins, Runyan, and Newman all each allowed a sack against the Detroit Lions, which is not a good D-line. Jenkins didn't play his best against the Lions, but you do have to wonder, is that related to his ankle injury? Seems like a pretty easy argument to make. He played very well against the Saints. Myers has been playing well. Billy Turner, I think, is fine, but I really need him over at right tackle and not at left tackle, because I don't want to be trotting out Dennis Kelly as our other starting tackle against the 49ers.
No, the problem is that the strength of the 49ers defense is their ability to rush the passer, their front seven. And if the Packers are going to be without their two best offensive linemen, with Bakhtiari on the PUP list and Jenkins, injured with this ankle, that's a very big vulnerability. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't have time to throw the football, the Packers are in trouble. Although, and I'll flip it on its head a little bit with this, maybe that forces Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur to go to quick passes, to scheme players open on those quick passes, and maybe ensures that the offense is a little more efficient and a little less going for the home run ball all the time like we saw in week 1.
Let me pitch this to you. If the Packers manage to squeak out a win against the 49ers this week, with all the guys that they are missing, that to me would be a signal that they are for real. And let me be clear, by the way, I don't think that the 49ers are this crazy good team this year either. I just think that with where the Packers are right now and the issues that they are currently facing, I just think it's a bad matchup. And this is a rivalry that has been pretty one-sided in the last few years. The Packers did really beat up on the 49ers last year, but it was, they were not playing very many of their starters because everybody was on IR. Right. So, but to be clear, I said in my opening argument that it's all about the trenches, and I do believe that. If you look at the rest of the 49ers team, outside of their linemen on offense and defense, they kind of have next to nothing right now. You got George Kittle, and you got a bunch of good linemen, and that's about it. So the biggest concern that I have for the 49ers right now is their cornerbacks are terrible. You got Josh Norman. He's so far is graded out as 47.2 on PFF, which is very, very bad. They have a young guy. I think he's a rookie. Yeah, he is a rookie. 5th round draft pick, Diamador Lenoir, who is okay but not great, and he's gotten picked on a bit. He did allow a 71-yard completion last week. Now, 49ers fans were excited about the fact that Lenoir didn't really seem fazed by that. Like, he kind of just brushed it off and went about his business on the next snap as though it hadn't happened.
Well, you got to have a short-term. You got to have a short-term memory if you're a cornerback in the NFL.
Yep, and that's great. That's great for him. Something that'll help him a lot in the future. But he did allow that completion in the first place, which is good news for the Packers. He also he has a measly 34 run defense grade. And we saw how much the Packers wanted to pound the ball last week. I will note the 49ers have some decent-ish, or at the very least, very athletic inside linebackers, which is bad news for the outside zone run scheme that the Packers like to employ with Aaron Jones. This, to me, is a week where you got to lean hard on A.J. Dillon and, really play some big boy physical football, run the ball up the middle with A.J. Dillon so that it frees you up to do other stuff with other players. And if you just only lean on trying to get Aaron Jones outside or take those deep shots, like you said, it's going to be a long night with a lot of Packers defense on the field.
Yeah, and that's what the Packers can't afford. So, I mean, look, unfortunately, in many of the visits to California, especially Santa Clara, where the 49ers now play, Matt LaFleur and his team, A, have been outcoached, and B, often did not look ready to play mentally. Certainly that was the case in both games in 2019. In fact, if you add the LA Chargers game, you could say 3 games in 2019 that, the Packers went out to California and just laid an egg. But this game, because of the way the offensive line is set up, because of the injuries that both teams have, it is going to be vital for Matt LaFleur to have a very, very good game plan and to have the Packers execute it. They have got to be able to compensate and work around those injuries and then attack the 49ers where they're weak. And one thing that I noticed when I was breaking down this game, the Packers last week, neither MVS or Allen Lazard had a catch. And I don't think Lazard even had a target last week. But both of those players have somewhere between 5 and 7 inch height advantages on most of the San Francisco cornerbacks. And especially on little wide receiver screens and little dump passes like that, you can use that to your advantage and keep the sticks moving by exploiting some of those matchups.
That's a very good point. And consider this, and this is kind of conspiracy land in a way, but so the Packers got blown out against the Saints. And there's not a ton of useful tape that you provide to the 49ers in terms of, hey, here's the things that the Packers do really well that you need to be prepared for. And then you go up against the Lions, and it was a good game, and the offense played well, at least for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a very one-dimensional offense. It was a lot of just Aaron Jones, and then once in a while, when they really needed something extra, they'd work in Devontae or Tunyon, and that was about it.
Mm-hmm.
You did have Randall Cobb, I think, was only on the field something like 18 times. He ran 12 routes, was targeted 6 times. Is that correct? No, he was on the field 12 times, ran 6 routes, was targeted 3 times, and caught 2 first down conversions.
Okay.
I think that's what it was. Point being, he's not out there very much, but when he is out there, Rodgers is kind of force feeding him the ball. Something to keep an eye on is if 18 is on the field, just keep a heads up that Rodgers might be having a little bit of tunnel vision for him. We'll see. I think that it's quite likely that he's trying to prove or justify to the Packers brass that, hey, the move to go get my guy was worthwhile. Look at how productive he is. And can you please keep my buddy out here with me a little bit more often? I think that's probably some of what's going on. But anyways, to the point, a pretty one-dimensional Packers offense last week. This is maybe an opportunity against the 49ers to really open it up wide, go for broke, do a lot of crazy stuff. The 49ers, I think, are going to be one of the tougher challenges that the Packers are going to face for a while. It's a good opportunity to really go ahead and just empty the whole playbook on the field. And you have an advantage that was not probably intentional, but was of your own making, in that the 49ers don't have a ton of useful stuff to scout on you.
Yeah, it's sort of, not the way you planned it, but it works out in that sense. And now it is up to the Packers to take advantage of that and any other, favorable matchup. Look, I think that if the Packers offensive line was fully healthy, they would have a much better chance in this game. I am just concerned about the Packers offensive line coming down with these injuries right when they're facing a very, very tough defensive front seven in San Francisco.
Oh, it's going to be very tough. But I am optimistic when I look at the Niners offense. They just don't have a lot going for them right now outside of their offensive line. And by the way, I mentioned Trent Williams is the number one left tackle in the league right now.
Right.
And then their left guard, Laken Tomlinson, playing very, very well. He's got an 81 grade. That's phenomenal. Right guard, Daniel Brunskill, is performing quite adequately. No problems there. But then there's center Alex Mack, not really, blowing down the world over there. Mike McGlinchey, right tackle, also a bit leaky. Those are some spots that you could maybe attack. Kenny Clark has been playing very, very, very well right now, which is atypical for him. He's kind of Mr. December. He turns it on late in the year. He's already playing just freakishly well. If he's getting some pressure through Alex Mack, and then you got either Preston or Rashawn blowing up the right tackle, that is maybe a recipe for getting some pressure on Garoppolo, who is a serviceable but not elite quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. And then they have no running game right now. No running backs. Elijah Mitchell is kind of the only guy that they have as any kind of an option to run the ball right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody else is hurt. And Elijah Mitchell, look, I like him a lot. He was one of the guys that I was advocating that the Packers should draft even. But he's hurt. He's not participating in practices right now. He's got a shoulder injury. Who's going to run the ball? Well, they have some practice squad guys that might be getting elevated. Anybody you have ever heard of are all hurt. JaMycal Hasty is not practicing. He's got a seriously hurt ankle. Trey Sermon is in concussion protocol. It's Elijah Mitchell and practice squad guys. And yeah, the scheme is great. No question about that. But you got guys who have not been working in the scheme, who don't know it, and who were not deemed rosterable by the 49ers when they were putting their 53 together.
There is the belief right now in the NFL is that you can more or less plug in almost any serviceable running back. And if you've got a good scheme and you've got a good offensive line, you can make those running backs productive. And that is particularly true in this type of offense that both the Packers and the 49ers run. It's all off the Shanahan tree. And we remember what happened in Denver, where every year it seems like someone you never heard of before became a 1,000-yard rusher for the Broncos in that scheme and then left that scheme and was never heard from again.
Right.
We're going to put that to the test to see who the 49ers, can put together and whether or not they can run the football. Now, the flip side of that is that the Packers' run defense has not been a strength of this team for several years now. And, you get the feeling the Packers' defense plays best when it has a lead to protect. And they know you're going to throw the ball, 75, 80% of the time when that happens. And if you don't, they don't care if you get 4 yards on 1st and 10 because the clock will keep running and, they're playing with a lead. I get the feeling this is going to be more of a shootout kind of game. And I think that test of how important is having a good running back versus the scheme and the offensive line, we're going to see how true that is on Sunday night when the Packers meet the 49ers.
All right, well, let's talk about our defense for a minute then. I feel a little bit alone in saying that I actually have been pretty pleased with the new Packers defense. I know that they are allowing a lot of points. I think they allowed touchdowns on something like 9 straight drives from the end of the Saints game to the first 2 drives in the Lions game. I think that was the stat. Not great. But we said on this podcast that the Packers defense was going to take a while to get rolling, that they were going to have a slow start. So I didn't come in with sky high expectations. And the things that I have seen that have given me a lot of confidence, number one, their tackling ability. The Packers are the number 1 best tackling team in the NFL. Can you think of any time in your lifetime when that has been true, Gil Martin? The Packers finally learned how to tackle. It's so crazy that when they actually catch up to the ball carrier, when they get a guy over there, he stops and drops, and that's the end of it. That is not something that you ever see from Green Bay.
It is good to see. I need to make sure that it continues to happen. Mm-hmm. But that aspect of it is encouraging, to say the least. And, look, I am less pleased with the way the defense has played over the first 2 games than you are. To me, the first 6 quarters of this year, the defense was pretty bad. And the biggest concern for me long-term, because, like you mentioned, we talked before the season started and said it's going to take the defense a little time to adjust and to, learn the system and get comfortable and all of that. I can live with this to a point, but the lack of pass rush, I'll tell you, the Packers miss Zadarius Smith in a big way. And all of these reports that are coming out that at halftime, Matt LaFleur went up to Joe Barry and said, hey, you better start sending some pressure because we're not getting anywhere close. Joe Barry should have known that already. I mean, that's not something that you necessarily should be having to tell your defensive coordinator. The lack of a pass rush, the lack of a consistent pass rush, 1 sack total in 2 games. And I believe it was on a play where Jared Goff kind of patted the ball, caused a fumble, and that was accredited as a team sack. I'm not seeing enough pass rush, and over the long haul, that's not a sustainable model.
Yeah, Rashawn Gary is currently the highest graded pass rusher on the team. Then Zadarius Smith for his limited snaps that he's been out there. Kenny Clark is the 3rd highest graded pass rusher on the team. I agree that they need to get more pressure on the quarterback. That is for sure. But through 2 games, I'm not concerned yet. We saw, I think, a lot of progress from week 1 to week 2. Even though that was against the Lions, I fully expect to see more progress now in week 3. And I want to go through some of the other guys on this defense who have me kind of excited. So the highest overall graded defender that we have is Preston Smith. He is one of the highest graded run defenders in the league with an 87.4 overall grade. That's borderline elite. Kenny Clark playing as good as he ever does this early in the year. That's crazy. But the next two guys on the list for highest graded Packers players on defense, Oren Burks and Devondre Campbell. You never see that from linebackers. Joe Barry has taken our scrub linebackers and made them quite productive. Devondre Campbell is the second highest graded run defender on the team, 85.8 overall grade. He has something like 12 tackles already, playing very well. And yeah, he got that interception in the last game, but I think it was Garvin who was the guy who actually wrapped up Goff and made him throw that stupid pass that he should have just taken the sack. It was idiotic of Jared Goff. But credit to our pass rush for getting home on that play. And then you know who the fifth highest graded defensive player we have is? It's Eric Stokes.
Yeah.
Eric Stokes. Now, some outlets, including PFF, are crediting him with giving up a touchdown. The Packers coaches have definitively said, no, that was Kevin King who allowed that touchdown. Stokes left his guy and came over and tried to break up the touchdown, but it wasn't even his responsibility. So, Stokes has been targeted 5 times, allowed 0 completions, and has a pass breakup. 75.9 overall grade. Put him at CB2. It's time. Start him over Kevin King. I actually have... Here it is. We played 3 cornerbacks at any kind of significant snaps in the slot. Chandon Sullivan has played 22 snaps in the slot. Been targeted 3 times. Gave up 3 receptions for 27 yards and a touchdown. Not great. Jair played 17 snaps in the slot. He was targeted 5 times, gave up 2 catches for 21 yards. Kevin King played 16 snaps, targeted once, gave up 1 reception for 8 yards and a touchdown. But Kevin King only being targeted 1 time when he's in the slot, that's what I like to see. Now, I think clearly a little bit of this is who guys are getting matched up against. Right. And so we got to look at, okay, if you're running that, who would you be matched up against the 49ers? Against the 49ers, I want Jair in the slot because their slot receiver is Deebo Samuel. Now, I would also like him to follow Deebo, so if Deebo goes somewhere else, I'd like
would too.
Jair to go somewhere else.
To me, also, that would be a fascinating game within a game. When I watch the coaches' film next week, I want to watch every time those 2 guys are matched up against each other.
Now, here's the really big question for me is Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk has basically not been playing for the 49ers. He sounds like he is in the doghouse with Kyle Shanahan. We're not really sure what's going on with that. We know that he missed a substantial amount of practice, and that probably has something to do with it. But Ayuk clearly has a lot of potential, and yet he's not getting used much. And when he has seen the field, he hasn't played great. He's only got a 55 overall PFF grade, which is below average. But if you look at Ayuk as their 3rd best receiver behind Trent Sherfield and Deebo Samuel, and you match Kevin King up against Ayuk, I don't know that I feel comfortable with that because Ayuk has the upside to really burn you. I'd almost rather have Eric Stokes on Ayuk, which would make him CB3. I understand that, but he would be playing outside, and you'd have Kevin King on Trent Sherfield, who is an okay player, but he's nothing special. And I don't think that he has that upside to really gouge you the way that guys like Scotty Miller have, and Deontay Harris for the Saints, and the way that I think Brandon Ayuk really could. To me, that would be where I would put Kevin King. I'm looking up Trent Sherfield's 40 time because I'm curious. He ran a 4.45, which is pretty fast. But Brandon Ayuk is a this is tough because the note right here says that he ran a 4.50, but that he was dealing with a core muscle injury and that the coaches don't think that's his official time. I hate when we don't actually know how fast guys are because of that. Like if you weren't able to run your actual 40 at the combine, can we get some other number? Because you've run other 40s in the past besides just at the combine.
You got to dig a little. Sometimes those numbers are out there if you check the original draft scouting reports on a player. Sometimes they'll estimate the 40 time, or they'll say they ran this at their pro day, especially when they don't actually run at the combine. But yeah, it is frustrating. But
hang on. I did find an article here talking about Ayuk, and so this is Chris. I don't know how you say his last name. I would say Biederman, but it could be Biderman. There's no E. It's just B-I-D. Chris Biderman of the Sacramento Bee, when he was drafted by the Niners, and mentions that 40-yard time was extremely disappointing for those who know Ayuk, and that how recently he had that core muscle surgery, to run a 4.5 right after that was kind of impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the quote. Barrows, who's Barrows? Biderman is quoting somebody. Matt Barrows of The Athletic. Here we go. And Barrows, by the way, is paraphrasing a conversation he had with John Lynch. Barrows wrote that Ayuk, in fact, has elite speed that would rank among the best in the NFL. Citing Next Gen Stats, Barrows reported Ayuk recorded a speed of 21.97 miles per hour in an Arizona State game this past season. Only 3 NFL players recorded faster speeds in 2019. That would be Matt Breida, Cordero Patterson, and Brandon Wilson. 3 guys that we know are blazing fast. Can we put Eric Stokes on Brandon Ayuk? They're both young guys, both probably going to make some, young guy mistakes. But Eric Stokes is, I believe, the fastest guy on our roster. Can we just please put him on Ayuk? And I don't want to see anybody else out there. And keep Jair on Debo, because Debo is the guy that they're gonna, is gonna get the plow horse's share of targets.
Look, the thing is this: I want to see Alexander on Debo Samuel. But the way the Packers typically play is they go left side, right side, and they don't necessarily, lock in on one, to have Jair follow one particular receiver regardless of where they line up. And that's going to be interesting to see how Joe Barry, whether he changes that or whether he is willing to allow the 49ers to sort of dictate those matchups. And the one thing you can't allow for any length of time is Debo Samuel lining up opposite Kevin King.
No, for sure. I agree 100% with what you said. This is certainly a situation where even if your overall philosophy is that we just keep guys in a spot, you can't do that against the 49ers because of this disparity of talent here. Debo Samuel, it's like going against Devontae Adams and Malik Taylor and Reggie Begelton, and then saying, whichever corner we have in front of that guy is who's gonna. No, put your best corner on Devontae, and don't get cute with it. Just do that all day, or you're gonna pay for it. Debo Samuel is grading out right now as the 4th best receiver in football. I don't expect that to necessarily stand all year, but he's playing quite well. 20 targets, 15 receptions, 282 yards, which, by the way, 282 yards leads the league in receiving yards through 2 games, and 1 receiving touchdown. His receiving grade is 83.3. He also has 2 carries. Put Jaire on Debo. Don't mix it up. Don't get cute. Don't overthink it.
I agree 100%, but it remains to be seen what they're going to do. And you also have to figure in they will double team Debo Samuel on some plays, and they will play a combination of man with a maybe a deep shell zone behind it. So there's all kinds of middle grounds between all of these things. But I really want to see Alexander on Debo as much as possible, if not all game long.
All right, let's look at our matchups to keep an eye on. We've already kind of talked about Debo Samuel. We also, at the beginning, we were talking about Kenny Clark versus center Alex Mack. That's going to be a matchup to keep your eye on. And then if you run with how they have been playing, Rashawn Gary is the guy that's going to be matched up against Mike McGlinchey. And I think that there is a good possibility for that matchup to be exploited by the Packers. I do like that. George Kittle obviously is the biggest X factor, and that's actually a guy that we maybe should have talked about a bit when we were talking about our corners, because, do you want Devondre Campbell covering George Kittle? I'm not so sure. Maybe Jaire is the guy that you have covering him. That's the problem with, the 2 or 3 superstar tight ends that are in this league, is how do you cover them? It's really hard. And if you don't have the best of the best at linebacker, you really have to get creative in how you defend a guy like that.
I think you have to almost use like Adrian Amos to part of the time, at least, to try to slow down Kittle. And
Amos, by the way, has not been playing well so far.
No, he hasn't had a great start, but I think you mix in Campbell and Amos and try to keep them guessing a little bit. And yeah, it's a tough matchup. It is a very difficult matchup, especially if you're not getting pressure on the opposing quarterback.
Speaking of those quarterbacks, by the way, we had to play some contain. Because I think that Jared Goff might be the least mobile quarterback I've ever seen outside of, Big Ben.
Huh.
And he was gashing the Packers with his feet. The 49ers have Trey Lance. They're going to use him a bit. He's going to come in on some RPOs. The Packers have to be mindful of this. And by the way, it's something they have to get better at, because they're going to play Kyler Murray. They're going to play Lamar Jackson. They're very likely playing Justin Fields. This week, they take on Trey Lance. I would argue he's the 3rd best rushing quarterback that they're going to face this year. Trey Lance has not played well so far this year, but I don't just assume that he's going to be mediocre again against us, because mobile quarterbacks have a way of having really good games when they play against the Packers. So there is that. We should flip the field around, look at Packers offense versus Niners defense, and the matchups to keep an eye on here. Safety
Bosa against whoever the Packers left tackle is.
And Eric Armstead against presumably Billy Turner, unless Turner's over at left tackle.
Unless Turner's over on the left side. Right, exactly.
Both of those guys are going to be an issue. DJ Jones is not typically much of a pass rusher. He has an above average pass rush grade. He grades out as pretty decent. 69. You would usually say that like roughly 70 is kind of where you would start calling him good. But he's a phenomenal run defender, which is kind of some bad news if you are going to try and just run A.J. Dillon up the middle. And then if you're running Aaron Jones on the outside zone, you have to deal with Fred Warner. You have to deal with Marcel Harris. They do also have Azeez Al-Shaair. Oh, I nailed it. Oh, man.
Well done. Well done.
His run defense grade is horrific. This is the worst grade that we've seen today at any position for anything. It's a 26.8. So, but you can't assume that he's going to be out there very much. He's their Sam linebacker. Fred Warner is definitely the guy who, along with safeties Jimmy Ward and Jaquiski Tart. Those are the guys you really got to watch out for in shutting down Aaron Jones, who, by the way, hasn't been running great by Aaron Jones standards. He's getting like 3.4 yards per carry, I think. He's looking just okay. Now, I did notice the longer he played against the Lions, the better he looked. We never had any rushes of more than 10 yards, though, so that was concerning against a not great Lions D-line. But it was encouraging to see that he was getting better as the night went on. I hope to see that progress carry over into this week. But having DJ Jones in the middle there as a big run stuffer is bad news for the alternative A.J. Dillon strategy. And then in a positive light, you got Josh Norman to pick on at sort of that CB2. And Diamador Lenoir is a guy that you can definitely take some shots at with Rodgers to Devontae. That's a matchup you can exploit because of his youth and inexperience. But you do have decently good safeties out there to kind of mop up some mistakes. And if the 49ers have any brains at all, they're going to be playing too high safety, which has been very effective recently at stopping Aaron Rodgers, who, again, is not playing well by Aaron Rodgers standards or really by the standards of the rest of the NFL. Even last week, although he was credited with 4 touchdowns, he's like a bottom like 20 to 23 or 25 quarterback right now through 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
We need to see a lot better out of him this week if we have any hope of beating the 49ers.
No question about that. And look, you know, we said before the season started, during the offseason, we did a thing where we were supposedly trying to guess when the Packers would lose their first game.
Yep, and I said the Niners.
You said the Niners. I said 1 week further. I said Pittsburgh.
Yep.
We were both wrong, unfortunately. But I mean, this was a tough matchup even before the injury situation was known. So this will give us a much better idea of what kind of a team the Packers really are. Losing in week 1, you could say it was a fluke. If the team picks it up and does well the rest of the year. Beating Detroit at home, you could say, well, it's just Detroit, so you could not take a lot away necessarily from that. Going on the road to San Francisco and playing a healthy 49ers team on Sunday Night Football on national TV, to me, even if they don't win, if they play well and go toe-to-toe with the 49ers, that tells me this team is where we think they're roughly going to be.
All right. So the 49ers beat the Lions 41-33. They beat the Eagles 17-11. The last 3 games between the Packers and 49ers, final scores, you had Packers 34, 49ers 17 last year. And then in 2019, you had 37-20 in the NFC Championship game and 37-8 in the regular season.
You do know that the Packers have beaten the 49ers 3 out of the last 4 regular season meetings between these two teams.
Well, that is true. Okay, 2015, we beat them 17-3. 2018, we beat them 33-30. Then you have the 2019 game in late November, which was 8-37, and the 49ers won that. That's a good point. Now, this is obviously a different team because we have a new head coach. So under Matt LaFleur, we played 4 times, but you're right. One of those was in the playoffs. You can't really weight that the same. And so under LaFleur, we have gone 1-2 against the Niners. But if you factor in those last 2 regular season games where McCarthy was the head coach, that's true. That's true. We've only lost 1 regular season game against them. Who's winning the game, and what is your score prediction?
I think it's going to be San Francisco 34, the Packers 31.
Well, this is a turning point for the podcast. This is the first time in No Huddle Radio history that I am picking the Packers to lose. I really hope that I'm wrong. I would love to come back next week and you and I can laugh at ourselves and say how wrong we were. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think that the Niners offense is going to have a hard time getting going. I think the Packers offense is going to have a hard time getting going. Probably you're looking at 24-11 49ers. That's my score prediction this week.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think the Packers defense is going to play relatively well for 4 quarters, but I think they're going to be on the field so much. Why did I say 11 points? That would mean that they're converting a 2-point, which the Packers never do. 10 points for the Packers. I think they're putting up 10, not 11.
Okay. All right.
24-10, that's my official score prediction, and I'm really hoping to come back next week and laugh at myself.
We'll find out, but like I said, this is a big test for the Packers, and even if they don't win, I really want to see them go toe-to-toe with this 49ers team and be competitive to the very end of this game.
I think win or lose this week, I still feel optimistic about that Steelers game.
You know what? This is one of the tougher parts of the schedule right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, playing in San Francisco and then hosting Pittsburgh in back-to-back weeks, 2 not-so-easy games. Let's see. Let's see how this team responds.
All right, that's it for today. We'll be right back here next week. Follow us on Twitter @GilPackers and @JJ Leahy to stay up to date on all things Packers or to ask us questions. You can also email us questions for the show at asknohuddle@gmail.com. Make sure you're subscribed to Packers Talk on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Big thanks to PackersTalk.com for powering our show, and thank you for listening. Until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.
You are listening to Packers Talk Radio Network.
PackersTalk.com.